Is this just not wanting to do it? Alright. Time for a nice personal one. Alright, here it goes. I've been talking about trauma. Here's some of my childhood trauma. So when I was born, I didn't know my actual dad. I had a stepdad the whole time. The problem was I was a smart child. So when it came to the point that they were telling me what actually happened, I remember sitting there thinking, these people can't handle it if I can't handle this situation. So I need to get through this and then go outside and play in the dirt in a hole where I like to play in the backyard. So I gritted my teeth through the conversation. As soon as they were done, I went outside. I played with some trucks in a piece of dirt. I can remember that. I must have been like 3 or 4, I'm pretty sure. After that, I had a whole bunch of anger in that house. There was a bunch of anger in the home. There was a lot of walking on eggshells. I also modeled that from copying the way that my mum was interacting with the world, because she's good at walking on eggshells and trying to take care of other people. Probably from her own trauma, who knows? This stuff just goes generationally, usually in a family. From there, what am I trying to say? Well, my stepdad would be there physically and he'd pay for the rent and all of that stuff. But emotionally and I guess mentally as well, he'd just be checked out. I don't know if it was the whole time when I was young as well, but definitely as I got older, I'd realize that he'd pretty much come home from work, peace out on the couch, not really think about whatever was going on. I don't know, like I said, if that was a pattern for the whole time, but it might as well have been because he was really emotionally unavailable. All of this stuff was going all right for me anyway until I got to maybe about 9 or 10. I think it must have been 10. And I won some stupid cricket game. It was that simple. But I was so happy that I beat him at something that I wrote, I wanted a cricket bat that I'm pretty sure I still have at their house. And from then, it was almost like bits of violence would start to come into the house. I got slapped a few different times in the face for things that were absolute garbage. I can't remember when it started, and it wasn't like it was all the time. It was literally 3 or 4 times. I think it was 3, whatever. But just the walking on eggshells and like the lack of stability, the emotional dysregulation that was in that entire household, that entire family, my entire family, really made me go even more internal. Because, like I said, I remember this conversation when I was like 3 or 4. I remember losing a bit of my trust for authority and for my parents and for people that were meant to take care of me at that point. But yeah, after these slaps and stuff started, and honestly, there was like a bubbling. It's like the drama and the arguments and stuff would all get kept behind closed doors. I know that they were trying to do that for whatever misguided idea that they had, that they thought that they could like hide that stuff behind closed doors and that we wouldn't realize. But children just know this stuff, whether they understand why, like I unfortunately did, or looking back I did, or whether we don't even realize what's going on. Those emotions and those bits and pieces in the house, that bubbling and festering really bit of anger and resentment, it destroys just people's entire lives. I'm only just starting to deal with this stuff and only starting to see how it actually truly affects everything now. Uh, from there, because I didn't have any real good male role model, and because I started playing drums at a fairly early age, maybe even because he sold a motorbike to buy me a drum kit. Like I said, provider, just emotionally and mentally not there, and that's what I need because I'm a fairly emotional person. I like to think very deeply and analytically about things and dive very, very, very deeply into subjects. So not having that opportunity, not having that available to me, was a kind of a death really, but I didn't realize it. It probably will definitely led to some form of childhood depression really. Like year 12, I think I turned up, I think it was 126, 129 days that I literally just didn't go to school in year 12. I don't even know how they passed me. I guess they knew little bits of this stuff, but insane. The problem here, though, with that disconnect and with not having a male role model in the house, I went and found that wherever I could. And for me, with the drum kit, like I said, like I was trying to say, sorry, that might have come back to the fact that that was provided for by him, but I latched onto this drum thing. I basically made it my identity. Like I tried to show you before, I've literally got a drum on my chest. So I remember being at I'll call it my second family because I had a best friend and we were there all the time. Almost every weekend I think was spent there. After I finished playing field hockey, I started playing basketball with him as I was moving into high school. So it was a good way to keep connected because we went to 2 different high schools. And his family were basically like my second family. So I was there all the time and could kind of escape some of this stuff at home. I didn't realize what I was doing at the time, but that must have been what I was doing. Unfortunately for us, though, his parents weren't there pretty much at all either. They'd hide in a back room and basically let us do whatever we wanted. But his sister really liked a band called Blink 182. And I remember getting a mixtape from that band. Actually, I remember laying in his bed one night after I'd been playing a bit of drums, and I'm like, I can play this stuff. He pretty much laughed at me and said probably not, but I can play it. I might even try and I will put up a clip right now of me playing some of their song. I think I'm right. So, um, I had this drum identity, but what I started to do, and why I'm covered in these tattoos and had piercings exactly like their drummer, nose, all of it. I even copied another drummer and got other bits pierced, but that sounds bad, my nipples. But I started to look up to these drummers and to make these drummers that male role model. I did everything I could to try and fill that gap that I had. I don't think I knew what I was doing at the time, and that's the problem with being a child. We've got these ideas and we have these needs and these desires and these wants that we've been trying to fill. But because we've only got such a limited life experience, a limited mind, we don't understand how to navigate this stuff properly. And I think a lot of parents don't realize how much more complex their children are. I like to look at children as literally just little people. It doesn't matter if you're 2 or 72, you're still a person, you've still got wants, you've still got needs, you've still got desires. The hard part is that a lot of times they don't have the words, they don't have the verbiage, they can't explain and express what they really need. But they'll go finding it in different places in different ways. They will find a way to meet the needs that they have. And usually they'll find ways to meet a lot of their wants that they need too. The problem is that again, they don't understand what's going on and they'll fill it with some of the worst and most filthy, disgusting garbage. Uh, at some point after this drum identity, I ended up literally trying to find my relationships by looking at a computer screen. You can put two and two together because that was a massive addiction for me. And I've only hopefully just broken that I've only broken that recently, not hopefully. It's been a few months now. I'm past all of that garbage. But this all comes back to not having the proper fulfilling relationships, to not having the openness, to being lied to when I was younger, to having people try and manage their image instead of just spilling out the truth, to having people try and hold back the conflict and the other things. And that just means that you don't get to learn any healthy forms of conflict resolution. Even worse though, if you don't get to see the negative and the disgusting forms of conflict resolution that people try and use, you've got no ground, no foundation, nowhere to even springboard from. I think it's almost better to have some of these arguments, obviously within reason. You can't be abusive, you can't literally mess with people's heads. But by trying to keep it behind closed doors and having that air in the house, you are doing just as much, if not worse, damage to people. I honestly believe it's almost better to have these arguments in front of your children, because then, within reason, because then at least you're going to be more aware of what's going on. You're going to have more of a motivation to actually work this stuff out. They're going to get to see these things, and hopefully everyone's going to actually sort this stuff out and things will actually be in the open rather than being hidden behind closed doors. Every single person that I can talk to, and think about it. If I'm doing these things, if I've been raised like this, most of my friends through my life, all of my friends through my life have been very, very similarly traumatized. Actually, I was only just thinking about this today or yesterday. I think it was this morning. A child that I had in my life started catching up with some of the people that I worked with in high schools. They've got the same kind of trauma and they find each other. I saw it in the high schools. I'd see these groups of people that I knew were in care because I was working with children in care, but they didn't know what my list was. They didn't know who the people working with them were. They would just manage to find themselves in the playground. These similar traumas and these similar kinds of people, let's tell it how it is. They piggyback on each other. That means that the weight from each of them is on the other person, dragging them down further and further. Even worse, because they're both trying to placate and trying to heal themselves, to find ways to understand what's going on with them. They find even more of a group that are just like an echo chamber, bouncing back the exact same toxic ideas that they've got themselves. They end up in the same entertainment. They end up in the same bubbles. They end up with the same beliefs. once they're together with those beliefs, they think that that's all that there is. It's literally like an algorithm just in real time in the playground. Think about it. Your friends were probably very, very similar to you as soon as you broke down into their stories and started to realize what was going on. So I looked up to all these drummers. I found all my male role models by copying drummers. It started with Travis Barker from Blink-182, and then I had a friend move into school, again, with a very similar story, very similar issues. Then it moved into Lars Ulrich from Metallica. After that, I found heavier stuff and started to look at the little, no, I'm not going to call him a midget, but Joey Jordison from Slipknot. Like, this stuff started to get darker and darker. Unfortunately for me then, or fortunately, I had this pop punk thing going on and I was listening to way, way heavy music. So I remember literally talking to bands and saying, hey, if we're going to be doing all this pop punk stuff, why don't we play some of these fun breakdowns? And next minute, this whole screamo thing was a thing, and I was in some of those kind of bands. I mean, I didn't do much. I looked like I was in bands, but every single time that I'd get to that point where something would actually go successful, I truly believe, even just writing down these notes, that it comes back to winning that first game of cricket, that stupid little touch. It wasn't even a touch game. I think it was whatever it was in the backyard, sorry. Whatever that game of cricket was, the fact that I won that and then started getting treated like absolute trash cut not any of my confidence, because I ended up with an even worse false bravado later, but it cut down my ability to actually execute and let things go, let things win. As soon as it looked like something was going to go well, I would back away and cut it down. Literally until the last couple of years, I would let the chance of losing just completely cut everything down and cut me off. I was already a perfectionist in my younger years because of this same stuff, trying to keep myself from that hurt. But I literally just today realized, today I think, just realized that it's because of this win being the reason for some actual physical abuse that started in my life, and to be getting treated worse, and to see other people be hurt as well. I remember even worse winning an actual arm wrestle with him when I was a bit older. And again, thinking about the times now, that was one of the other times that I got slapped. It's literally that AB complete garbage because of that guy's complete mess of a childhood himself. If we don't handle these traumas ourselves, we are passing this stuff on to our children. We don't want that, and we need to be so careful about what it is they're going through, because again, we need to supply their needs, or they're going to go find a way to get all of their needs and all of their wants sorted. It's that simple, and that's going to be much more toxic than if we do it. Where am I? So let's just go with the best friend. So I've got my false identity. I've already been running away from my family and the violence and garbage there. I got told, thinking about it, my friend may have tried to blame me, or my friend's parents didn't want to think of him as somebody that was causing all these problems in his own life. He actually got someone pregnant, and somehow that was my fault. So when all this came out and came up, they told me not to go to his house. I did exactly what they wanted. I remember one day we went out and hung out. It had been the first time we'd seen each other in a couple of months because they banned me from their house. And we went and caught up, and I was planning to get picked up at another house up the road that I guess it was part connected to him, but it doesn't even matter. I told my mum where I was going to be, but it turns out his parents had contacted my mum. Because from my point of view, I'm standing at this other house waiting for her to pull up. I see her stop. I see her get out. She doesn't even look at me and walks straight into my friend's house, goes and starts talking to his parents. So I waited a couple of minutes to try and not even go anywhere near their house. I'm like, oh, well, legally the footpath isn't their yard anyway, so I'm just going to go stand by the car and just wait. I'm standing there leaning on the car. They pretty much all come, let's call it marching out, but there wasn't really an attitude that I remember. I'm standing there. The dad's in front of me. His mum's this side and my mum's that side. The dad, who was also my pastor of my church at the time, literally tells me that if I ever come back to his house, he's going to quote unquote beat my head in. Imagine what that does to I was 16? I must have been 16, I think. I'm pretty sure I was year 11. So straight away, I'm like, well, I don't trust you anymore because you just threatened me. I don't trust you, and I don't trust you to my own mum again, because that was at least the second time that trust got completely broken because of what happened when I was 3 or 4. As soon as that happened, I also went, well, you're all Christians, so I don't trust any Christians. I'm just going to go and do whatever I want. So all my music stuff now moved into just being selfish music stuff. I literally doubled down on all of these bands and whatnot, and ended up basically, to jump forward a bit, I went into all of these bands and stuff and started with the same issue of not being able to execute, not being able to follow through. As soon as with multiple bands, things seemed like they were going in a very, very positive direction, I'd basically, looking back, find some way to self-sabotage it. It is the most ridiculous thing. I used to do it to absolutely anything that looked like it was going to work. And like I said, I've only just recently in the last couple of years worked this stuff out properly and been able to actually push through this stuff and to actually deal with it, to actually start to unpack this trauma. And only this year I've started to properly unpack that generational trauma. And that has brought so many light bulb moments, so much freedom, so much understanding for myself. It's made me able to actually properly deal with, properly process, and actually move past things that honestly I'd pretty much already sorted and worked out. But having more of an understanding, I guess it really unlocked more empathy for other people. It showed me the actual roadmap and how to do these things at a deeper and a bigger level. And yeah, well, I'm just helping other people do it now. It's that simple. Where am I? But anyway, the music stuff, sorry. So with these bands, with these things, they'd start to get to a decent level. And one of the ways that I self-sabotage was it'd be going really well, but when I was 18, 19, maybe even 20, some things were going pretty well. But then I realized, why bother going and playing all the drums and doing all the effort when I can just go and do all the partying anyway? And pretty much any of my crew of people that we were doing music with, it ended up just being like everyone was just getting drunk every other weekend. Every weekend, all we were doing was partying and going to shows and doing whatever. So I quit even putting in the effort and just got completely lazy. I also found weed and started smoking as well. That was an easy way to run away from the problems. I actually remember a clip from a show, and I probably did this without realizing, because we all get programmed and influenced by things that we don't even remember, and we take them in and make them part of us. That's the problem with our belief systems. That's the problem with this programming. I literally remember watching Weeds when I was about 21, 22. Maybe, no, I would have been 20, I think. I literally remember watching this show, and one of the characters said, 21, 22, because of the season. One of the characters literally said, or they were trying to be sober for the day. He literally said, okay, quick, give me some weed. Like, I'm having too many memories. I'm going back to things I don't want to remember. I'd block them out. Quick, give me something. That's basically what this guy said. And that was basically what my life turned into. I would just smoke to run away from my problems, even though I didn't even realize that's what I was doing. I was just completely numbing myself, completely doing everything I could to slow myself down, really. Because as you can probably tell, my brain works pretty quickly because my mouth works almost as quickly. I just wish they were a little bit more connected. And I actually used to make a joke about needing a filter between the two. I don't even care anymore because I'd rather just spit out all the complete truth. Like I said, I was lost. I was always crumbling when I was winning. I got programmed by the TV and by the internet stuff. The internet stuff was even worse because then I could run away from stuff by going deep and analytical into things. There's other reasons that I got into it, but I got into conspiracies and any kind of big ideas that could literally just distract me and give me the dopamine hits that I didn't even realize I was addicted to. Chocolate, I'm lucky I've got a fast metabolism, but chocolate would absolutely smash me. Chocolate, lollies, any of that stuff. I could eat a ton of that. I could smoke a ton. I could do the other stuff with the internet. I'd just be flooded in dopamine. And now I've had to literally untrain myself with all this dopamine stuff just to be able to have proper motivation, to be able to do the actual hard work instead of going for these cheap dopamine hits, which is another huge and one of the biggest problems that we've got with these children and with these teenagers at the moment. We don't realize how much we're just feeding an actual addiction. Just because if crack was able to be sold at 7-Eleven, we'd be thinking that it was good too. Just because sugar is legal doesn't mean that it's a good thing. I'm starting to think the same thing about coffee. We add all these stimulants in, even cocoa. It was literally used by the Aztecs as a stimulant. We've got all these different stimulants and we just throw them to our children at different ages. I'm getting more and more shocked at the ages of people that when I was working in the high schools that were telling me about their morning coffees. I'm like, you're 13, you're 12. Why are you having coffee? You don't need that stuff. I guess I was a bad example because I'm walking around with 7 of them a day myself just to keep operating, but we don't need this many coffees. Children don't need these coffees. We need to be more careful what we're actually putting into our bodies and what that's doing to our minds. Because any of those chemicals, that soup, are programming what we're doing. We're making basically highways and like walked over paths until they become a highway in our brain, fast tracking ourselves to bad habits. And then later we're turning around and trying to break them. This is why I've said this in a video before. This is why people will sign up for the gym at the start of the year with their New Year's resolution. And by February, most of those gym owners know that these people aren't even going to turn up if they ever did in the first place. It's an easy way to make money. That's why they all push their gyms as much as they can at those times. We're really good at making a resolution, but we don't want to actually have the revolution and do the work for ourselves. I hope I remember that and use it. After this programming, we've got all this conscious and subconscious and superconscious stuff going on in our heads. in our heads. We've got all these beliefs, all these different bits of programming, all these bits that are literally pushed further and further down into our psyche, into who we really truly are, into different parts of our actual cells. I've talked about this before too. You can look it up. There's actual cells in our heart that can read, write, and I think it's recall. Read, write, and recall. Whatever. There's literally cells in our heart that can make and can recall information. They can literally, there's a memory in our actual hearts. I think it was 20,000 cells, if I remember properly, that we've got just in our heart that can actually make memories. Like, if that isn't something, we've got our mind, we've got our heart. If all these things are making memories, maybe that's part of our problem. Maybe we get our habit up here and then eventually it sinks down into our actual physical heart. How much harder is it to get that memory out of there? There's stories of people that have transplants and they start having dreams about what's happened to the person that they got the organ from. It's insane. Go look that stuff up. If we're not working this stuff out, if we're not more careful what's going on, this is where we end up. All our trauma responses, all these negative things that happened, they've all become an actual part of me, and I've had to go in very, very deep, realize where it's happened, where I've doubled down on it, where I've let the entertainment, the songs, every other bit of garbage come in to just give me a confirmation bias in my own little echo chamber. You don't even need your friends. You're doing this stuff to yourself with the stuff that you're watching and putting into your head. Think of half of the songs that you watch. I remember using Spotify as an oracle. I could pretty much put in people's names on a playlist, start to add songs, put it on there and have a song that comes up that had something to do with them, and it would suggest it because that's how the algorithm now works. That's what our brains and our bodies are doing to us. If we don't go back and heal these traumas, we are just trapped. I'm just going on and on. We need to do this work on ourselves. If we're not, it's hard to do this work on ourselves. It's almost impossible. That's why people pay for coaches. That's why people pay for counselors. That's why people pay for psychologists and psychiatrists. I'm just going to do a plug. My whole deal here is I've been looking at self-help, and the biggest self-help book, I don't even care how it sounds, is the Bible. Most of the stuff that was working in my youth work was literally just principles from the Bible. That's why psychologists like Jordan Peterson do actual entire talks on the Bible, because there are so many different bits of wisdom in there that we can use to actually fix our lives. There are literally keys in there to unlock in these stories. If we can look at these things and understand what they not even what they truly mean. If we can look at these things, we can get blueprints to help ourselves, to fix ourselves. We can get our whole society, let's face it, is based on biblical principles. That's where they come from. It's principles from the Bible. That's exactly what we've got, a Judeo-Christian society. It's getting crumbled and broken down now, fair enough. But our morals and the things that we believe in, the things that we want to hold to, that's where they come from. Yeah, people used it to justify garbage, whatever. That's where the good things came from. That's where literally school, universities, hiring people, helping people, elevating people. That's a better word than hiring. That's where it comes from. That's what this stuff is. I've been studying this stuff my entire life, and I've been able to do a lot of this work on myself with the help of counselors. Not that they really gave me much help, but honestly. But I can do this because I've done this before. I can do this for you. Reach out to me anywhere. You know where I am on Facebook, hopefully. You can reach out to me here. Drop a comment. Email me at contact@childrenr.com, and I will help you or your family. That simple. This stuff's possible, guys. We can get free and clear and far from this trauma. We can heal our own trauma and make it so much better for our children. They can be pushed up on our shoulders. They can go much further than we can instead of tearing them down without even realizing what we're doing. You guys can do it. Dig into your own trauma. Think about it. Record a video like this and just watch it back and see what you actually think. See what you've actually been talking about. See what you've actually been doing. You can do it. See you later.